On this week's episode, we're going to discuss Chevrolet's Colorado ZR2's dirty little secrets. All right, welcome back to Fab and Adventures, guys. So today we're going to talk about my Chevy ZR2 and why I'm trading the turd in. And I mean turd, it's been a lot of trouble. We're going to go through and I'm going to discuss and I'm going to show you guys a lot of the trouble that I had with this truck here. I've only had it for 50,000 K or thereabouts, and it's just seems like it's been non-stop trouble and I'm just tired of it. So I'm trading it off. It's going back to the dealer tomorrow, and I'm picking myself up a brand new half-ton with a 3-liter diesel, and we're going to hope that that's a better unit. So my initial idea when we bought this truck, you know, we bought it to be a work truck, and I work in the oil patch, and I'm on a lot of gravel and a lot of mud sometimes, and I just thought I needed a truck that got decent fuel mileage, that had 4-wheel drive obviously, but the big advantage to me, I thought, is it had dual lockers. And you know, my idea was that after I was done using it as a work truck, I would downgrade it for myself for a bush truck or turn it into an overlander or something like that. But it's just been too much trouble and I just can't deal with it no more. So let's talk about one of the biggest pains in the butt that I've had with this truck, and it's been the front axles, front CV joints, the boots or whatever. So at 18,000 K, I was at work and I was turning a corner in a flat gravel parking lot basically, and I heard a real loud bang and a bit of a jump, and I thought I hit something, which I shouldn't have because it's a flat parking lot out at the plant there. And so I got out and I looked and I couldn't see anything really wrong. So I drove it a little bit further and it just did not want to steer like at all. So I got out and looked, and the tires were splayed out like that. The front tires were splayed out like that. I got looking and the tie rod was bent like at a 90-degree angle or 45-degree angle. It was bent severely and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Basically, I had to have somebody take me home, had to get my diesel 1-ton and the trailer, bring it out, put this truck on the trailer, get it home, take it to the dealership and get them to look at it. And the biggest disappointment was when I took it to the dealer, they looked at it and they told me that I pulled it out of the mud using a tow rope on the tie rod and bent the tie rod, and which isn't what happened. It bent on me right in the driveway. So that kind of pissed me off, if you want to say so. You know, we fought back and forth, and eventually now the dealership themselves are making good on the deal, but this is 8 months later or so, and now that I'm buying a new truck, they're gonna pay me back some of that money, which is saving face, and it says a lot about the dealership, but GM in general didn't warranty it. And I think what happened, and after doing some research on the internet, is the boots, the outer boots on the CV axles are failing early. From what I've been seeing it, some guys are having their boots fail at 5,000 miles and they've never been off pavement. And so when a boot fails, you know, and where I'm working, it's on gravel all the time, so you're sucking gravel in and it just kills the knuckle. And before long, I think it bound up, something locked up in the axles just when I was turning, and just the right circumstances is how it bent that tie rod. I can't really explain it, but that's what I'm thinking. So that not only happened once, but it happened twice, and I managed to catch it before it bent the tie rod. But the knuckles, the boots gone, and the knuckles were pretty well wore out, and I actually took it to a different dealership and they warrantied it. So that was good with that dealership. And so that happened twice in less than 40,000 K. And about 35,000 K, I had both sets of front axles go. And the first time it happened, there was no parts in Canada. I had to fly them out of the States, and it cost me like 3,500 bucks for both left and right axles, inner and outer tie rods. Had to have them flown in from the States, and it cost a ton of money, and I had to put that up front at 18,000 K. So let's go on to another problem, and it's the lower, the rear lower shock hangers. I mean, they hang down way under the axle, like way lower than they should, and inboard quite a bit. So at work, when you're, it gets pretty muddy sometimes in the spring, and we end up having trenches, where the tire tracks are, and you're driving in that, and those lower shock mounts are dragging in the mud. Now they have a little plastic shield on them to protect the shocks, because the shocks have the shaft down. So they have this little plastic shield on there, and those things do not last long being dragged through the mud. I was changing those things every couple weeks because they were getting ripped off. And that was a big pain, and not too long into it, maybe around 20,000 K or so, I had one rear shock go, and that rear shock, I seen the bill for it would have been $1,400 to change that rear shock. Luckily, that was warranty. So here's another one of the things that I hate about the ZR2 is these seats are horrible. They're definitely by far the worst seats I've ever sat in a Chevy truck. And I've had a lot of Chevy trucks, from new to used, old. I've been driving Chevy trucks since I was 16 years old and been faithful to the brand. But I mean, a 10-hour day in this truck, here is basically my office at work, or was my office, and a 10-hour day of work, you're probably in the seat of this truck 6-7 hours a day or so, and by the end of the day, my back was just killing me. So, that's one thing for you guys to know. The seats are not super comfortable. If I was to drive from here to BC, say a 14-hour drive, I'd be like an 80-year-old crippled man coming out of this truck here. So I wouldn't want to drive this thing long distance. Horrible, hard, flat, nasty seats. All right, another thing I hate is these factory Wrangler Duratrack tires. I have never fixed tires so much as these Duratracks. Now, don't get me wrong, I run Duratracks on my 110 diesel, and that's all I've run. My other work truck, I ran Duratracks. They were a great tire. Never had no troubles. But these things are like a 4-ply tire. I have fixed every one of the tires in 40,000 K, and even one was punctured by a rock so big that it was unrepairable. So I had to get another tire, which I ended up just getting a Cooper, and because these weren't in stock, just to replace. But come on, Chevy, like, put some good tires on. My new truck that I got coming, I won't even take the factory tires. I got them taken off, and I got other tires put on because I have zero faith in the factory tires that Chevy puts on. Horrible decision by Chevy to be putting on such low grade tires. My 2014 half-ton that I bought had Wrangler SRAs or something like that, and they were the worst tire in snow. Absolutely horrible, and just all around crappy tires. So the factory tires that come with these Chevy trucks are horrible. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Chevy fan through and through. I've always drove Chevy trucks, but come on, you guys, stop dropping the ball on the tires. Put some real tires on. This is horrible. All right, let's talk about the other thing that picks my butt about this truck is where the spare tire mount was. It hung so low, it was almost as low as the rear diff. And so, in snow, if you get stuck a little bit, you're gonna get hung up on that tire. They can't tuck that thing up a little bit higher. It hung down so low. That was the first thing I took off and out. And then you got to throw it in the back of the truck. A little box. You don't have a whole lot of room, and I carry a fair bit of stuff, a toolbox and parts and whatnot that you need to do the job. And having to have that spare tire in the back sucks up a bunch of room. And having it down here in this horrible spot, you're just going to get stuck or hung up on it. Come on, you guys, pack that tire up a little bit higher. This is, what kind of engineering? You guys have been making trucks for a long time. Cannot get this stuff figured out. And for a 4x4 marketed as an off-road truck, to have those shock hangers hanging that far down low, that far inboard, is just another thing to hang you up. And I know lots of people have complained about that. That is a horrible decision and should not have been even put on the road, in that everybody else is not having these hangers way down low and halfway between the diff and the tire. It's a bad decision as far as I'm concerned. Now, you got to remember, these are my thoughts. These are my ideas on what should have been done or what could have been done better to make this a way better truck. Okay, there's another thing here. Another thing that picks my butt is the fuel mileage in this little truck. And the fuel mileage, you would think, should be decent. But for the job I'm doing, checking wells, I get just as good a fuel mileage or better with my 1-ton Duramax than I do with this. And this is the gas job. I got it because it felt like it had more ability for tire spin in the mud than the diesel had. The diesel just didn't seem like it had the get up and go. Now I know the diesel would have got way better fuel mileage, but it was heavier. You know, it's just, there's a whole bunch of things that directed me to get the gas job. And man, this thing is not good on fuel. It never was right from the get-go. And I can drive my 1-ton diesel for cheaper per day than I can drive this truck. And that's just not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. Small truck like this should get better fuel mileage. So the one day I went to work, everything was fine, and parked the truck at the office, went into the office, did what I had to do, came out to start going to check my wells, and I fired it up, put it in gear, and nothing happened for 5, 6, 7 seconds or something like that, and then bang, it went into gear. And I went to step on the pedal and there was nothing there. It just kind of slowly sort of took off, and then all of a sudden it was like I had full throttle, wham, and then away she took off, you know. And I thought that was kind of odd, and I drove down the road a little bit and then it was fine. So I went, checked this well way back in the bush. You got to remember where I'm working, I'm way back in the bush. And I got to this lease, did what I had to do, and went to leave, and I had no power. It was a little bit muddy, and I had like no power to back up or turn. I had to put it down into 4 low and pretty well pin it to be able to even move slightly in this mud. Now eventually I got myself out, turned around and out back to the main road, and I got back to the main road and all my gauges were just twitching, and there was, you know, there was just stuff clicking under the dash, and the gauges were all twitchy and nasty and glitchy, and it was like you could hear solenoids clicking on and relays and this and that, and it was just, everything was going all over, and the fuel gauge was down, and like it was a major electrical gremlin going on, you know. I was actually lucky to make it back to my plant, and again, had to get a ride back home, get my 1-ton, get my trailer, come back out, pick it up, put it on the trailer, bring it home, take it to the dealership. They brought it in and they found a wiring harness that had broken wires. So I was talking to a guy at work about it, and he's like, well, maybe there's something got wet underneath there. Fords have this box underneath the cab right under here, and they got to unplug it or whatever to lift the cab off or whatever. So it got me thinking, and I got under there and looked. And here, sure enough, there's a box looking sort of thing right under the seat here. And there's wires that come out of it, a whole whack of wires, a whole bundle of wires, however many's in it, like that big around, probably 40 wires or something, and it's hanging down lower than the frame, and then it comes back up. And the gravel in like 40,000 K had ate that insulation off, so you could see all those individual wires. Now luckily the coating on the individual wires wasn't ate off, but the outer coating was gone, so it wouldn't be a whole lot longer till the gravel had, you know, sandblasted the coating off all them other wires, and we had a short, and maybe this thing would have lit up on fire and I could have fist pumped or something. But I was so unhappy, so discouraged with this truck that if it would have lit on fire, I would have probably just walked away. You know, really, really frustrating. The dealership found a harness that had broken wires in it. They fixed it, and I'm like, oh good, it's probably that wiring harness underneath. When I got it home, I crawled under there and looked. Nope, that wiring harness is still there with a bunch of bare wires. I'll show you guys that right now. All right, let's see if we can show you this wiring harness. Yeah, you probably can't see it from that angle. There you can kind of see it. There we go. There you can see that wiring harness right in the middle of the screen with a bunch of the coating wore off of it right here. All these wires here are about to get sandblasted, the coating off of them. And what a dumb idea. There's no shield for this. It hangs straight down. Why can't they hang it off the side or off the back or something like that, so that that harness doesn't get shredded up like it is? I mean, it's a dumb design hanging down right there. It's going to catch all the rocks from the front tires. You know, it's like this truck is not designed for off-road. It's meant to be a pavement princess. And I've heard a lot of guys say, you know, Chevy's trucks are just a gentleman's 4x4, and they're not meant for actual any sort of off-road. You know, pavement, use a four-wheel drive every now and then when you might have a tire slipping because there's a little bit of snow. You can see down the back there how much those shock hangers hang down low. Here you can see the little plastic shields. Hopefully you can see it, the little plastic shields on those. And they hang down so far that the mud or dirt or whatever rips them shields off. And then it just, you know, if you don't fix it right away, it's beating up the bottom of your shocks. Pretty soon you got a leak, and then she's done. And it's $1,400 to change one of them shocks. So don't get me totally wrong. I mean, they're a great looking little truck. They have e-lockers front and rear. I mean, they're a good little truck, but they got some major problems, major engineering issues, I think, that should have been addressed, or hopefully will get addressed at some point in time or another. They have a nice little low range. When you put it down in low range, it actually has a nice slow kind of a crawl to it. It's decent low range. The V6 has pretty darn good power. I mean, the V6 gas has pretty good power. It really gets up and goes. That way, it's pretty good. The other bonus that I've seen to the ZR2 is the lower control arms are steel, not aluminum. So as far as I'm concerned, that's an advantage. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I never looked at the regular Colorado to see if they're steel or aluminum, but I did look at the 3/4 tons and stuff, and they have aluminum lower control arms. I would think steel would be a better deal. And one last little positive note is the front approach angle is actually pretty good. I mean, maybe not head on to stuff, but if you take stuff at an angle, you can get your tire onto it before your bumper hits. You know, everything's plastic on these trucks nowadays. It doesn't matter what you buy, you know, and short of, you know, paying a bunch of money and getting a custom front bumper made, or me making one, or whatever, you know, they're a pretty decent little truck that way. Just some major downfalls to this unit. So that's about all I got to say about the ZR2's dirty little secrets. It does have some pros, it does have some cons. I was just hoping that I would be able to help out some guys that are maybe possibly thinking about getting one of these. There are some things to think about, for sure. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you guys for watching Fabin' Adventures. Make sure you subscribe, share, like these videos, give me a thumbs up, hit the bell to be notified for future episodes. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's @Fabin_Adventures. Catch you guys next Sunday.